Hello, and welcome to MTG Another Look. These are cards that you should take another look at. Don't forget to like and subscribe to help the channel. Thank you. Nesting Dovehawk is a card I want to talk about. When I first read it, I thought, okay, it's a growing ranks with a creature attached. Sure, no big deal. But it's much better than growing ranks, and I was surprised by how much better it actually performs in gameplay. Not only do you not have to get through a whole turn cycle and back around to your upkeep to see the first populate trigger like you do with growing ranks, but the body attached to the effect on Nesting Dovehawk is surprisingly relevant. It'll most likely get its first counter on the turn you play it with the populate trigger, and effectively be a 3/3 before you pass your turn. A 3/3 flyer for 4 is not great, but it is serviceable by itself. But if you put it in a deck that is already creating creature tokens, then the number of +1/+1 counters are likely to add up a lot quicker than once per rotation. It can easily be a surprise beater or grow at instant speed while attacking or blocking with cards like Grand Crescendo or Secure the Wastes, cards that should 100% be in the deck already. Or if you attack with an Adeline Resplendent Cathar on the field, that's 3 counters by itself. Also, the power of the populate ability can't be overstated. Each of your turns, including the turn you play the Nesting Dovehawk, you can be creating a creature token. That's virtual card advantage. And more than in any other format, in Commander, you need to focus on building decks in a way that maximize card advantage. The populate ability will help you do that. With this card, you're creating more attackers and blockers for free, no mana required. That's great no matter the size of the creature token, but in a token deck, having 4/4 Angels or Gnome Soldier tokens on the field is very likely. And creating a massive beater each turn is an easy way to overwhelm opponents. It may not look like it when just reading the card, but Nesting Dovehawk puts in a surprising amount of work. Nesting Dovehawk would go great in commanders like Bernard Ginger Sculptor, Onyxthea Hand of Erebos, or Benny Brack's Zoologist. Chandra Hope's Beacon is the next card I want to talk about today. This version of Chandra costs 6 mana, which is a hefty amount of mana, but she does come into play with 5 loyalty counters, with the option to gain 2 more with her first activation. Effectively starting at 7 loyalty is a pretty good amount. If played on a board that's kept in check, it can be hard for opponents to kill her just by attacking. More than a lot of other planeswalkers, there's a good chance you'll be able to utilize her for more than one turn. The aforementioned +2 ability also adds 2 mana of any combination of colors. So on the turn you cast Chandra, she's effectively costing you 4 mana. That's a pretty good discount for a planeswalker like this, and every turn she sticks around, she can add another 2 mana. And that's great for helping to cast large spells or just smoothing out your colors. But her static ability is the real reason I wanted to talk about her. On each turn, that includes yours and your opponent's, she copies the first instant and sorcery spell you play. That means if you're playing instants, you can copy multiple spells a turn cycle. That ability is very powerful. It creates virtual card advantage by duplicating the cards you already want to be playing. Are you casting a quick study? Well, congratulations, now you draw 4 cards instead. How about a Red Sun Zenith? Now you're doming your opponent for double the damage. Breach the Multiverse? Well, now you get 8 creatures. Copying spells for free is a very powerful effect, but it's especially powerful in red decks. Red, more than any color I'd argue, struggles with card advantage and drawing cards in general. Copying instants and sorceries like Big Score or Thrill of Possibility, or the other somewhat limited ways for red to draw cards, will make those cards twice as effective, and your red deck be able to keep up with the card advantage of other colors. Chandra's static ability and her +2 work in tandem in a powerful way. You can cast her, add mana with her first loyalty ability, and use the mana to cast an instant or sorcery to copy on the same turn. Her other 2 abilities are both pretty good, with her +1 being able to find cards on the top of your deck to cast and copy if you run out of castables, and her -X ability serving as removal or a way to finish the match by herself. I've seen her run away with the game and being able to deal 9 or so damage to players by herself and knock them out. With her having a +2 ability, the loyalty counters stack up surprisingly quickly. Give her a shot, you may be surprised with how well she plays. Chandra would go great in non-combo versions of Calamax the Stormsire, Kess Dissident Mage, or Judith Carnage Connoisseur. Next, let's talk about Bribery, a card that pairs well with Chandra. Bribery is a 5 mana spell that can search an opponent's library for any creature you want and put it directly onto the battlefield. That means if your opponent is playing Eldrazi or Avacyn Angel of Hope or a Blightsteel Colossus, you get to put it into play for the low price of 5 mana. Wow, what a savings. Bribery has been around a long time, and in one-on-one games, I've seen Bribery win the game all by itself. Back then, you target your opponent, grab their best creature, and ride it out to victory. A lot of people were unprepared for having their own Akroma Angel of Wrath played early by their opponent and start beating them down. It's still very possible for this to happen nowadays in Commander. Targeting the right opponent and choosing a creature that's hard to remove can mean you get a huge mana advantage and may be able to take out an opponent or two before they're able to do anything about it. A lot of players, especially in casual pods, will have a bad habit of not playing enough interaction, and searching up a large indestructible or hexproof creature too early will be an impossible hurdle for them. Creatures nowadays are also evaluated more in terms of card advantage over just big stats or splashy abilities than they were in the earlier days of Commander. That means a lot of people prioritize putting creatures in their decks that will give them card advantage immediately. For you as a player casting Bribery, if you're expecting your opponent to have a removal spell and you think your creature will die, you can decide to grab a value creature from your opponents instead. Go ahead and grab that Atali Primal Conqueror, or their Prime Speaker Zagana, or a Bane of Progress. Or create a bunch of blockers with an Avenger of Zendikar. Bribery is a toolbox card, and even if you expect the creature you're about to get to be removed, getting a creature with an ETB effect that you happen to need for just 5 mana in blue is very worth it. Bribery would go great in Zevlor, El Turel Exile, Don Andres the Renegade, or Jin Gataxias Progress Tyrant. Another card that I found interesting is Collector's Vault. This one might be a harder sell for a lot of you, but I've been adding it to some non-green decks as an additional way to ramp, and it's worked out pretty well. I've had times where I kept a not great hand with a Collector's Vault in it, and it helped me smooth out my draws early game, and play 5 to 7 mana spells earlier than it would be possible in colors that can't ramp. In those colors that can't ramp, like blue, red, and black, you have to rely on mana rocks or you're just going to be far behind your opponents. And those mana rocks are going to be way better in the early game than your Collector's Vault will ever be. Play your mana rocks first, but drawing a mana rock late is basically a dead draw. You're not happy to see them, and they're too slow. If you're playing a deck with mana rocks and Collector's Vault, you have an opportunity to cycle those late mana rocks away and trade them for other more impactful cards. And the treasure lets you use the mana you would from the mana rock too, at least for one turn. This card is going to be good in decks that can utilize the graveyard. Decks that have flashback spells or want to reanimate creatures can take advantage of the discarding and the treasures to cast those spells quicker. Collector's Vault isn't something I would recommend for every deck, but if you're having trouble with the right number of mana rocks, or having trouble finding that sweet spot of having enough artifacts to ramp early but not clog up your draws late game, consider trying a Collector's Vault. It might be just what you want. It can go well in Osgir the Reconstructor, Mondrak, Glory Dominus, or Felden of the Third Path. The last card I want to talk about is Blood Money. This is a 7 mana Wrath. Way too much mana, right? Normally, I would agree with you, but Blood Money is a card that excels in big mana decks. It can help clear out threats and protect your life total like any Wrath, but this one can also provide a huge windfall of treasure tokens when you do it. If you're in a deck that wants to cast big spells or X spells, this card can fuel them with the mana it provides. I think it's especially good in the classic mono black style decks that want to produce big mana with the Cabal Coffers and win by casting a huge Exsanguinate or Torment of Hailfire. Being able to Wrath and give you time to set up for a big spell next turn is already what black decks want to be doing. It's also going to go along well with Revel in Riches. It'll destroy your opponent's creatures to create treasures with the enchantment, and create its own treasures to add to the total to help you pull off the alternate win condition. If you're in a deck that doubles tokens, or a deck that wants to have a lot of permanence around a sacrifice, it can synergize well with those strategies. Give it a try. Blood Money could be a nice include for Mr. House, President and CEO, Jury, Master of the Review, or Mastermind Plum. I want to say thank you to everyone that joined me today to discuss some cool Commander deck options. What do you think of these cards? Are they worth a shot in one of your decks? Let me know in the comments and join me next time to take another look. Have a great day.